Welcome to Exposing Death Care, a podcast created to shine a light on the hidden, often dark realities within the funeral industry. I'm your host, Em, and each episode we bring you real stories from those who have experienced the best and worst of this hidden world. This podcast is a platform to expose unethical practices, harmful experiences, and shady dealings that have plagued grieving families, funeral staff, and the industry as a whole. By bringing these stories to light, Exposing Death Care aims to push for transparency, support those affected by trauma, and encourage necessary reforms in the way death care operates. By bringing these stories to light, Exposing Death Care aims to push for transparency, support those affected by trauma, and encourage necessary reforms in the way death care operates. From documentaries to dramatizations, what's fact, what's fiction, and what are they still not telling you? Listener discretion is advised. The stories shared in this podcast at times may be anonymous to protect the individuals involved. Thank you for listening, and we hope that by sharing these stories, we can work together to improve the death care industry for everyone involved. And just a reminder, there won't be any video on this, so
Good.
we can be as ugly as we want to be.
I was wondering, yes. Earlier this morning, I was like, I could stay in my jammies, couldn't I?
All right. Welcome to Exposing Death Care, the podcast, and today I am joined by death doula Kacie, who supports families at the bedside and beyond. Kacie, welcome to the show. Tell me about your journey into death doula work, a little bit about yourself.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. Well, my journey into death doula work, so I'm an RN. I came from the healthcare world, so I saw a different side of death before I was a death doula, right? I saw the healthcare side of death, and I saw death go wrong so many different ways and so many, for so many different reasons. And that's what really drove me into being a death doula, is just really trying to find different ways to support people through death so that there can be, better deaths or more beautiful deaths or more supported deaths at end of life.
Very cool. How many years did you spend in nursing before this transition?
So I worked in healthcare for 12 years before I decided to make the transition into becoming a death doula.
Any personal stories or pivotal moments that shaped directly this calling for you?
Definitely. So my whole entire healthcare experience was definitely shaping this all along the way. I saw so many deaths just go wrong for so many reasons. I worked in long-term care, so I would see people come to a long-term care facility to live out the last days of their lives. And a lot of times these would be people who were battling, terminal diagnoses, whether that be a cancer diagnosis or multiple sclerosis or ALS or Huntington's disease. Diagnoses that they had been or will be battling for a long time. And not always, it was obvious that doctors and nurses or physicians weren't always upfront with them about their diagnosis or their prognosis or where things were going. And there were so many times where you could see that people would do, treatments or chemotherapies or radiations or whatever almost up until their death, because nobody was really upfront with them about what does this really look like for you? Do you want to do this up until the day that you die? Do you want to be violently ill from chemo and radiation up until your last moments? Or do you want to do things a different way? Nobody's really ever given a choice. People just kind of always blindly follow doctors because that's what that's what we're supposed to do. What else? We're not really given these other choices. So, I saw things like that go wrong, but then I also saw end of life planning. There's no real solid education around end of life planning and what should be done. And so a lot of times deaths would get so tricky at the end because there was no end of life planning. Nobody ever talked about what they wanted done at the end of life. And so there was all of these decisions that had to be made, really snap decisions or decisions that had to be made by people who never knew that they were going to have to make those decisions. And so things would just get really tricky or dramatic at the end of life. But my one thing that really, I guess you could say, the nail in the coffin, if you will, if you want to be punny about, if you want, right? It was COVID. It was COVID that really made the change for me. I sat through COVID in a long-term care facility. I saw hundreds of people die in a really small amount of time. And these people were dying really terrible deaths. I mean, as doulas, we try to help people die these beautiful deaths surrounded by their family. COVID was so traumatic for everybody, the people dying, the people working COVID, the people witnessing these deaths. These poor people had to die alone. They couldn't get hospice services because they were dying so fast that there weren't even enough hospice nurses to get there in time to help.
Yep.
They couldn't
I
have
remember.
they couldn't have their family by their side. I mean, there weren't even enough nurses and staff members within the long-term care facility to be there with them. I mean, they were just alone.
Did y'all
And
have
I thought
people, like guests outside their bedroom windows and stuff like that? Because that was going on in Texas.
we did that all the time. Yes, we would, except I worked in a facility that was 4 floors, so we could only do it for the ground floor people. So the people that were on the upper floors, they couldn't do that for them.
A
We did
scissor
face
lift.
Yeah, anything, get them up to the windows. Yeah, we would
Chris
FaceTime
Angel,
families,
raise them.
do
Sorry.
anything we could to get the family so close to them, but it was horrible. And even worse was having to be a nurse to make that call to a family member to say like, "Hey, listen, your person's dying." And the first thing the family says is, "I'll be there in a second." And it's like, "But you can't come here."
Yeah.
And they just want to kill you. And it's like, I
Mhm.
understand. I mean, rip me apart. I'm just going to listen. Just go ahead, because I get it. I would do the same thing. I would be tearing down those doors if you were trying to tell me that my mom or my whoever was dying and I couldn't be there. So it was just awful. And as a nurse, I found that oftentimes I would put aside my nursely duties to sit there and hold people's hands while they were dying because I just couldn't. I knew these people and I knew that they were dying and they were scared and they were alone. And in that moment as a nurse, you were expected to just walk by their room and keep doing your nurse stuff. You don't have time. You don't have time to care about the fact that they're dying. You just got to keep going. And I just couldn't. I just couldn't put that aside. I had to stop what I was doing and be there with them so that they couldn't be scared. And for me, that was kind of my shift of like, I can't put aside this and go do that nurse stuff. What I'm doing is putting aside my nurse stuff to sit here and do this. And that was that pivotal moment where I realized I think that this is what I'm meant for, not that. I'm not meant to be out there doing that stuff that they're doing. That's what they're meant to be doing. I'm meant to be here doing this, holding their hands as they're laboring out of life. I didn't know that a death doula was even a thing in that moment, but I was doing it anyway because my heart was telling me that's what I had to do and that's what I needed to do. And that was my pivotal moment, my shift, my change. And I kind of, I shifted there and I never really went back after that.
I can appreciate that greatly. It was COVID that really ramped up the commercialism and capitalism of death care for me. I had already noticed a lot of it, but things became so much more transactional instead of personal. And I could see where that relates to what was going on in your world as well. The task of being a nurse is transactional, it's not personal. And you risk your job doing these other things that are considered going above and beyond, which should just be the basic level of care that we get at end of life. Period. End of story. Well, let's jump into the dirt. What has been your experiences or observation in the end of life or end of healthcare industry that you want to spill the beans on?
I guess there's a lot of different things. I think that people assume that within healthcare, doctors, nurses, healthcare staff, that people are educated on death and end of life, right? So, you think that your doctor is going to be really well educated and going to be able to identify the signs of end of life and really know those. I think that there needs to be a bit of a shift in healthcare surrounding death all around. There needs to be much more significant training for all healthcare providers regarding death and what death looks like and understanding the signs of death so that, it's not such a hard topic. Even discussing death within healthcare is difficult. Discussing death in our culture is something that people struggle with altogether, but also within healthcare. Doctors really struggle when it comes down to end of life and having these conversations with their patients, bringing up hospice, bringing up palliative care. And I've had doctors that want me as a nurse to have these conversations with my patients instead. I've had patients that were actively dying where the doctor doesn't want to go in and do an assessment because that's creeping them out and they would just rather I do it. And that's fine with me because I'm absolutely not creeped out by actively dying. They shouldn't be either. They really shouldn't be either.
Yeah. They get more training and they get more money in their bank accounts. So, yeah, you would think.
They're There just needs to be more training and more understanding around death all throughout healthcare. Something else that I think is really, really, really missed altogether is providing healthcare providers with any amount of grace for grief. Look at how much death we saw just in COVID. The grief was absolutely monumental. The deaths that we saw were absolutely traumatic. The healthcare providers have literal PTSD from
Yep,
working COVID. And
that's
what
care too.
what type of stuff were they given for that? Was there any type of grief relief? Was there grief counseling? Was there grief anything? No, there was nothing. There was just this push for you to keep working and work harder and work more and pick up more hours, and the patients need you and everybody needs you and everybody needs you. But never was there any focus on how are you? Are you okay? There's never any type of focus on that. Working in long-term care, for instance, we work with patients for a really long time. We get to know them for months and months and sometimes years, and then they die. And when they die, the people above you, the uppers, the people who run these facilities, you hear from them almost instantly. Room bed is gone. I need that room cleared out immediately. I have a new admission ready to go in that room. And it's like a person didn't exist.
They do that at hospitals too. I want people to be aware of that. If your loved one dies in ICU, the emergency room, anywhere, they want them out of that room as soon as possible to put another person in it. They don't care that Bob is driving from across town to come see their loved one last time. And I can completely empathize with that for the employees, not for the entity, the business that's actually doing this. There was a TikTok the other day where a kid, he does skits, and he was doing a skit exactly like this. Well, this person died. Get him out of here. It's time for the next person to come in. And I'm like, I'm so glad there's a culture on social media that even though they're making jokes of this stuff, they're making people aware that this is something that actually happens.
The thing that makes it a little more different about long-term care is that that was their home. Those
Yeah.
people paid so much money for that to be their homes. They have pictures on the wall. There's pictures from their grandkids hanging. I mean, all of their things are in that room. You get a call from administration that you've got 10 minutes to literally move their chair and all of their pictures off of the wall and throw away their grandkids' things and their happy birthday cards and all of these things as if their life truly never even existed within the next 10 minutes because there's a new admission that's going to move into that room. And
Yeah,
then on
and
top of
Medicare stops paying when they die, so there's no more money after that. So get out.
Get
Get out
them,
of the
yep,
way.
hurry up, get their stuff, and then on top of it, you as the nurse are expected to call their family and tell their family, "Hey, I know that they just died. I need you to get all of their things out of here within the next 3 days." And the family's like, Wow." Like, they've lived there for 10 years, and I have 3 days to get their things out, and it's like, "Yeah, because someone else lives in their room now." And it's the most
Mhm.
insensitive thing that you've ever had to do in your life, and somehow as a nurse, I find myself being the one who's responsible for doing this so that the people way, way, way above me can make more money faster. And it's like,
Yep,
how
they
how
made
is
those
this
decisions, and they're
how
getting
is
paid
this
for it.
fallen? Right. How is this fallen on me? And then,
Mhm.
you think of all of the other residents that live in that facility who got to know this person who died. They've also known them for months and months or years and years. And there's no type of funeral or, sometimes once a month they'll do like a mass, celebration of life or something for all of the people who died that month in the building. It's just it's very much like run like people are just money, like they're not
Mhm.
people. Somebody dies and it's like nobody gets to even grieve the fact that a human being who we got to know and love for like such a long time. There's no grief counselors or grief somebody just on staff at places like that, not only for the residents who live there, but also for the staff members. And then it always makes me wonder if they treated healthcare staff members better in such a way, what would burnout look like? Would burnout look different? Would there be better staff retention if we were teaching staff members to take better care of themselves and to treat grief differently? Would we not have such nursing shortages and things like that, and instead of teaching people that you should work, 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 work yourself to death and not really care about yourself no matter what.
While you were talking about that, it made me recall how different it was picking up loved ones from nursing homes after 2020. The standard period as a funeral professional is they would make us at nursing facilities take the person out the back by the trash. They wouldn't let us go out the front. It was like, who'll disturb the other residents? What's more disturbing, pretending that Susie never existed or seeing her roll down the hallway with a blanket over her and a rose on her chest?
Agree. That always bothered me. I've worked at, several different nursing homes, and some of them did that where you always had to go out like the back door, the utility elevator, like the one that was for maintenance, right? Like it wasn't even the regular elevator, and I always felt like that was just so disrespectful. Like, wow, this person just died, and now as your last goodbye, we're like sending you out the trash elevator that only maintenance uses for like tools and stuff because we don't want anyone to see you on the way out. Everybody dies, though. Why would it scare everybody? It's not like they're not going to find out that Helen died. Eventually, they're going to all hear about it. So I always thought
Well, it's
that
the
was
same with
really
hospitals too. They have us take the decedent out by the trash and things like that. Few and far between that you're ever in an area where other people might be. And I understand that yes, you're protecting the people from death, but it also makes the hospital look like they failed at their job to keep the person alive. So hence they have the sneakiest ways to take the decedents out of hospitals. Like you'll think that it's like a linen cart. It's got these metal sides with a drape over it, but there's a body in there.
not funny.
Yeah, interesting stuff. Have you ever witnessed any situations where families were withheld information directly or they were misled at the end of life?
Honestly, no, just because I'm not good at being involved in situations like that. I would spill the beans
Brilliant.
to a family. I would spill the beans so fast. So, yeah, places, I'm not good in situations like that. So, if anybody tried to kind of hide anything from a family member, I would be really quick to kind of just kind of lay it out there. I'm not really interested in pulling the wool over anybody's eyes. So, thankfully, I haven't had any situations like that.
So, in my experience in the funeral industry, I see a lot of the insider feelings about different stuff that's going on. Death doulas have only really been on the radar for the last few years, but I have been aware of the emergence of death doulas for at least 10 years and was interviewed at one point saying funeral directors need to have relationships with end of life and death doulas, period. End of story, because we as funeral professionals can't do everything. So, as a death doula, how has your reception been from funeral professionals? And actually dealing with them, with dealing with clients or social media? What's going on?
That's a great question. So, as far as like social media goes, I've had nothing but great interactions with funeral professionals like you. Awesome, amazing. I've met the people from Parting Stone, green burial people, meeting new people in death care, funeral practices. I've had such a warm welcome that way. Locally here where I live, when I first became a death doula, the first thing that I did was get out there and start networking. It's kind of the thing that you do. And so I right away, like first thing on my list was to start networking with funeral homes. Let me just make friends with some
Yes.
funeral directors. It's perfect. We'll go hand in hand together. They did not agree. They did not think the same thing that I thought at all. And they did not give me a warm welcome and they were downright rude to me. They told me that there was absolutely no need for anybody like me, that this job was stupid and that I would fail. I was like, wow. I mean, rude. And it was a
Hmm.
woman. The one person was a woman, which I was really surprised to get such a reaction from a woman. There was others, some men that were just they weren't rude, but they were just like, "Oh, okay, that's great." And you could tell they were just very not interested in doing business with me or dealing with me at all. But it was the woman who was like really, really downright nasty and kind of put me in my place, if you would.
Hmm.
Nationally, I've had absolutely great, great reception. Oh, I've worked with the Neptune Society locally, and they have been amazing. They're a cremation society.
Break off of Dignity Memorial, which is SCI's, I will say, the evil empire, as I call it. They really have done better with their outreach and their willingness to embrace change. Whoever they've gotten leadership over at that corporation is doing some things better, some things. It's most of the pushback has been from these little funeral homes that don't want to accept change. sadly, weirdly.
Mine are like definitely like the chain ones out here that are not interested. I do have one natural burial in Ohio. It's kind of near me. I mean, it's like an hour and a half away from me. The Oxfield Preserve. They've been absolutely amazing and wonderful. Great. Love them so much. They've been wonderful. It's anybody who's kind of like doing newer things, they're always open to absolutely, let's talk about it. It's definitely kind of the people that are always into doing old school funeral home style, traditional burial, that type of stuff where they're like not interested in dealing with anything new like a death doula. And honestly, that's okay because I'm down to deal with people that are doing new stuff. So for me, it's like, that's fine. You guys keep doing what you're doing. And I'm going to work with people like Foxfield and, Neptune Society has been so warm and welcoming. I'll just work with people who have been awesome. We have like an end of life networking meeting out here, and I
Cool.
dropped your name specifically at my end of life meeting because nobody had really heard what aquamation is because it's not legal here in Ohio. And so I was like, oh, let me tell you all about it because you personally have educated me all about aquamation.
Well, much appreciated. It's been a journey, this whole social media thing. I've been doing it since 2016, and I've been the target of a lot of hate. And so every now and then it kind of shakes my self-confidence and I withdraw a little bit, but I'm putting myself back out there and hearing that I'm making a difference in the education and the knowledge that you have to help other people, that makes it worthwhile. It makes all these gray hairs worth it.
Hey, you are nailing it. So you take those haters and shove them because you're absolutely nailing it. I love your content and I will keep boosting you up, up, up all the time.
Are there any final closing stories that you want to share from your doula work that would leave listeners inspired?
This is my favorite thing to tell people, right? So when I was a nurse and I worked in healthcare, I worked really, really hard to fit my life into my work schedule. It was really hard to do because I worked a really hard schedule. And no matter how hard I worked at nursing, they never make you feel like you're working enough. And they always want you to pick up overtime and you're always trying to do more. And then you never have time to make it to your kids' concerts and, the doctor's appointments, trying to squeeze them in and this and that. And you feel like you're ripping your hair out trying to get everything done. Now that I'm a doula, I fit my work into my life schedule. I have a book where I have all of these things written out that I want to do, all of my kids' activities, all of my doctor's appointments, all of that stuff comes first. And then I fit my work into my life schedule. And it has been the most incredible life change, and I will never go back. If anybody's interested in becoming a death doula and making that amazing change where you kind of get to put your life first and put yourself first while also making an incredible change in the world and helping people, I'd love to teach you over at Death Doula School.
That's what Kacie does too, besides being a death doula and doing the hands-on. She's also educating people. And I want to take a moment to publicly thank her for being the first to extend her knowledge and education to me by having me as a student in death doula school. I am forever thankful for her starting that section of my educational journey and helping people make decisions that are going to be right for them at end of life. So thank you, Kacie.
Yes, absolutely. I'm honored to call you a graduate of Death Doula School, honestly. I love everything that you're out there doing.
Thank you. How can people find you now, Kacie? Where do they find you on all the things?
Okay, you can find me on any platform that you desire except for, Twitter or X. I'm definitely not on that one. But you
Me
can find
neither.
me on you can find me on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and YouTube and even on Pinterest at Death Doula Kacie. But you do have to spell Kacie Kacie. That's quite important.
Yes.
And then also my website is deathdoulakacie.com. You can email me, Kacie at Death Doula Kacie. You can even just Google Death Doula Kacie and you'll find me everywhere.
And I want to encourage any funeral professionals that are in Ohio to reach out and make that connection with Death Doula Kacie or another doula in your neighborhood. Actually, this goes for everybody. You need a death doula in your corner, whether you are working in hospice or you're working at a senior center. Or you say you're working at Fur's Cafeteria and you see old people. You need a friend that's a death doula. Fur's Cafeteria is probably closed at this point, and I'm definitely showing my age. I don't know if everybody knows that. It's kinda like a Luby's, where you go down the aisle and pick up your food, and then everybody goes and sits and eats down at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Anyway, I digress. Thank you again, Kacie, for your time today and for your knowledge and what you're putting out there into the world. It's great.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I appreciate you. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Exposing Death Care, the podcast. I truly appreciate your support and the courage of those who have contributed to or shared their stories with us. If you or someone you know has something to share, we encourage you to reach out. You can remain anonymous, and your story could prevent future harm. You can leave comments, ask questions, or provide feedback by connecting with us on social media at Exposing Death Care on TikTok and Instagram, The Modern Mortician on YouTube, and all streaming platforms. Like, follow, and share. Podcast music titled Exit Strategy by Enlia.